I worked hard for the family company, but my parents gave it to my sister. I left with my hard work and watched their empire crumble from afar. I stopped working 80-hour weeks for free, Dad said. Paul is better with people. Mom added, you can still help from behind the scenes. A week later, Dad called panicked about losing our biggest client. I just said, let Paula handle it. She's the heir, right? Within a month, 3 major contracts fell through, and they were begging me to come back, I replied. The pen hovered over the document, my father's signet ring glinting under the office lights. I watched, frozen in place, as he signed his name with a flourish, the same dramatic signature I'd seen on countless contracts over the years. My mother stood beside him, her hand resting on my sister Paula's shoulder. The pride in her eyes was unmistakable. That's it then, Dad said, sliding the papers across the polished mahogany table toward our family attorney Richard. Official as of today. I stood in the corner of the room, arms crossed, trying to make sense of what was happening. For 12 years I'd worked in the family business, Matthews Commercial Construction. I started as a laborer during summer breaks when I was 20, learned estimating in college, and eventually became the operations manager after graduating with my engineering degree. While Paula had been living her life in New York, pursuing a marketing career and showing up for the occasional holiday, I'd been here building, growing, sacrificing. Mark, my father's voice broke through my thoughts. Did you hear what I said? I blinked, focusing on the 3 faces now turned toward me. Sorry, what? I said. This doesn't change your position with the company. You'll still be operations manager. Dad's tone was reassuring, as if he was doing me a favor. Paula will be taking over as CEO when I retire next year, but your role is secure. My sister smiled at me, her expression a mixture of sympathy and triumph. At 32, she was 2 years younger than me, but carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd just been handed the keys to the kingdom, which I supposed she had. Mark, she said, her voice soft with practiced compassion. I hope you know how much I value your expertise. I couldn't do this without you. I stared at her, wondering if she actually believed that. Paula had worked for the company for exactly 10 months. 10 months versus my 12 years. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why Paula and not me? The room fell silent. Richard suddenly became very interested in organizing his briefcase. My mother's smile tightened. Dad cleared his throat. Mark, we've discussed this. Paula has the vision for where the company needs to go. She's better with people. The clients love her. You're brilliant with operations, with the technical side, but I'm not CEO material. I finished for him. That's not what I'm saying, he replied. But his eyes shifted away from mine. Mom stepped forward. Darling, you're a crucial part of the company. You can still help from behind the scenes. Paula will need your support. Behind the scenes. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. That's where I'd always been, hadn't I? Behind the scenes. Making things work while others took the credit. Paula stood and approached me, taking my hands in hers. Mark, this partnership will be amazing. You know the operations inside and out, and I can bring in the big clients. We'll be unstoppable together. I looked into her eyes, the same hazel as mine, the same as our father's, and saw nothing but self-assurance. She truly believed she deserved this. Congratulations, I said finally, extracting my hands from hers. If you'll excuse me, I have work to finish. I turned and walked out of the conference room, ignoring my mother calling my name. The familiar hallway of Matthews Commercial Construction felt suddenly foreign, as if I was seeing it through a stranger's eyes. Photographs lined the walls, construction sites, ribbon cuttings, handshakes with important clients. My father featured prominently in most of them. Paula was in a few recent ones. I searched but couldn't find a single one with me. Behind the scenes indeed. That night, I sat on my balcony with a bottle of whiskey and my laptop, reviewing project files, as I'd done countless nights before. My apartment overlooked downtown, the city lights blinking like stars. In the distance, I could make out several buildings we'd constructed over the years, including the recently completed Harrington Tower, our biggest project to date. the one that had put Matthews on the map as a serious contender for major commercial developments. The Harrington project had been my baby from the beginning. I'd stayed up for 3 days straight finalizing that bid, calculating costs down to the penny, developing the innovative construction approach that had won us the contract over firms twice our size. Dad had been the face of the presentations, of course, but the substance, that had been all me. My phone buzzed with a text. Paula, hey bro, I know today was a shock. Let's grab lunch tomorrow and talk through the transition. I value your input more than anyone's. I took another swig of whiskey and didn't reply. My computer pinged with an email notification. Another issue with the West Side development that needed my attention. Always something that needed my attention. I'd been working 80-hour weeks for years. Holidays spent on job sites. Vacations interrupted by emergency calls. Personal relationships sacrificed on the altar of the family business. All because I believed that someday the company would be mine. What a fool I'd been. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, staring up at the night sky. A decision was forming in my mind, crystallizing with each passing moment. If I wasn't going to inherit the company, if all my sacrifice was worth so little to my family, then perhaps it was time to reconsider my level of commitment. No more 80-hour weeks, no more middle-of-the-night emergencies, no more sacrificing my life for Matthew's commercial construction. From now on, I would work my designated hours. No more, no less. I would take my weekends off, I would use my vacation days, and most importantly, I would start looking for opportunities elsewhere. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like freedom. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 8 a.m. sharp, a good 2 hours later than my usual start time. Several employees did double takes as I strolled through the front door with a coffee in hand. Everything okay, Mark? Asked Nancy, our receptionist, who'd been with the company longer than I had. Never better, I replied with a smile. Beautiful morning, isn't it? My office was already buzzing with messages. 3 voicemails from superintendents on various job sites. 14 emails marked urgent. 2 project managers waiting outside my door. I greeted the project managers, listened to their concerns, and provided clear, concise direction, all within 30 minutes. No hand-holding, no taking on their problems as my own. Just straightforward management. At noon, Paula appeared in my doorway. Ready for lunch? Can't today, I said, not looking up from my computer. I've got plans. She hesitated. Oh, I thought we were going to discuss the transition. Nothing to discuss, I replied. You're the heir. I'm operations. Business as usual. Mark. Her voice had that cajoling tone she'd perfected since childhood. The one that usually got her whatever she wanted. Don't be like this. I finally looked up at her. Like what? I'm doing my job, Paula. Exactly, my job. Nothing more, nothing less. She frowned, studying me. Dad mentioned you haven't returned his calls. I've been busy. Too busy for the Westridge bid. He said you were supposed to review the final numbers, but you haven't sent them over. I leaned back in my chair. That wasn't in my calendar for this week. If it's urgent, I can look at it next week. Next week? Mark, the bid is due Friday. Then someone should have put it on my schedule with adequate time for review. I returned my attention to my computer. I'm sure you can handle it though. You're better with clients after all. The silence stretched between us until Paula finally spoke, her voice tight. Fine. I'll tell Dad you're unavailable. You do that. After she left, I sat back and took a deep breath. Part of me felt guilty. I'd never been one to shirk responsibility, but a larger part felt a grim satisfaction. Let them see what happened when I stopped working myself to death for a company that would never be mine. At exactly 5 p.m., I shut down my computer, gathered my things, and walked out of the office. I didn't check if there were any last-minute emergencies. I didn't make my usual rounds to ensure everything was set for the next day. I just left. The freedom was intoxicating. The Westridge bid went out without my review. We lost it to a competitor by a narrow margin. A mistake in the materials estimation that I would have caught immediately. My father called me into his office the following Monday. What the hell is going on with you? He demanded, face flushed with anger. We lost Westridge because of a rookie mistake in the bid. I sat calmly across from him. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? We've been courting Westridge for 3 years. This was our chance to break into the healthcare sector. I believe Paula was handling that bid, I said evenly. You know she doesn't have your eye for the technical details yet, he snapped. She needed your expertise on this, and if someone had scheduled time for me to review it properly, I would have provided that expertise during business hours. Dad's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm no longer available 24/7. I work from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. I take lunch breaks. I go home on time. I don't check emails on weekends. Since when? Since you made it clear that my 12 years of sacrifice for this company meant nothing in terms of succession. The color drained from his face. Is that what this is about? You're punishing the company because you're upset about Paula. I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I'm simply adjusting my work-life balance to reflect my actual position in the company, an operations manager with no stake in its future. You have the same stake as always. Nothing's changed in your compensation package. Everything's changed, Dad. You can't expect me to work like an owner when you've made it clear I'll never be one. He ran a hand through his graying hair, frustration evident in every line of his face. I need you, Mark. The company needs you, and I'm here. During business hours, doing exactly what my job description entails, no more, no less. Dad stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. I've got a meeting with the Harrington Group on Thursday. Their CFO specifically asked that you be there. Something about wanting to discuss the cost-saving measures you implemented on their tower project. Thursday, I checked my calendar. I can make 10 to 11 a.m. work. The meeting's at 9. Then I'll be there for the second half. I stood up. Is there anything else? He looked at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps he was. No, he said finally. That's all. As I walked back to my office, I could feel the eyes of employees on me. Word had gotten around about the Westridge bid. People were whispering, wondering what was happening with the Matthews family. Let them wonder, I thought. Let them all wonder. The meeting with the Harrington Group was a disaster. I arrived at 10 a.m. as planned, slipping into the conference room with a quiet apology for my tardiness. My father shot me a look that could have frozen hell, while Paula just looked bewildered. The Harrington executives, Thomas Harrington himself and his executive team, were in the midst of reviewing financial projections for their next development. Ah, Mark, Thomas said, brightening when he saw me. Just the man we need. We were discussing the implementation of that modular approach you pioneered on our tower project. We'd like to use a similar method for the new development, but with some modifications. For the next hour, I was fully engaged, answering questions, offering insights, suggesting improvements to their proposed modifications. This was the part of the job I genuinely loved. Solving complex problems, finding innovative approaches, creating value. When the meeting concluded, Thomas pulled me aside. I was worried when you weren't here at the start, he said frankly. Your father and sister seemed a bit out of their depth on the technical side. Paula is still learning the business, I replied diplomatically. So I gathered. His eyes were shrewd. Your father mentioned she'll be taking over as CEO. Interesting choice. I said nothing, which seemed to tell Thomas everything he needed to know. Well, he continued, I want you to know that Matthews got the Harrington account because of you, Mark. Your expertise, your creativity, your attention to detail. I hope that doesn't change regardless of the company's internal arrangements. I appreciate that, Thomas. He handed me his card. If you ever decide to make a change, give me a call. We're always looking for talent like yours. I pocketed the card with a nod. Thanks. As Thomas and his team left, my father approached, his expression a mix of relief and lingering anger. You saved that meeting, he admitted grudgingly. I did my job, I corrected him. Where were you for the first hour? I told you I could only make it from 10 to 11. I had other commitments. Dad's jaw tightened. What commitment could possibly be more important than the Harrington Group? My life, I replied simply. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to finish before the end of the day. As I walked away, I heard Paula ask our father, what's going on with him, and his frustrated response, I don't know, but he needs to snap out of it before he costs us everything. I smiled to myself. They still didn't get it. They thought this was a temper tantrum, a phase I would eventually move past. They had no idea that I was already drafting my resume and reaching out to industry contacts. No idea that Thomas Harrington's card wasn't the first such offer I'd received over the years. Just the first one I was seriously considering. Let Paula handle it, I thought. She's the heir after all. A week later, all hell broke loose. I was reviewing superintendent reports when my father burst into my office. Face ashen. "Harrington just called," he said without preamble. "They're reconsidering their future projects with us." I looked up slowly. Why would they do that? Apparently there's been a misunderstanding about the timeline for their new development. Paula met with Thomas yesterday and committed to a completion date 4 months earlier than what we discussed in the meeting. "That's not possible with their design requirements," I said flatly. "Not unless they want to increase the budget by 40%. "I know that," Dad snapped. "Everyone in this business knows that. But Paula thought she could win points by promising an aggressive timeline. And now Thomas is saying, either we honor the timeline Paula promised, or they'll reconsider their relationship with us. 15 million in future contracts. Mark, at risk." I leaned back in my chair, letting the information sink in. "What do you want me to do about it?" Dad stared at me in disbelief. "What do I want you to do? I want you to fix this. Call Thomas, explain the situation, work out a compromise. He respects you." "That sounds like a CEO problem," I observed. "Or an heir problem, not an operations manager problem." "Mark, for God's sake, this isn't the time for your attitude. The company is at stake." "The company that will never be mine," I reminded him. "The company you've made clear belongs to Paula's future, not mine. So let Paula handle it. She's the heir, right?" The color returned to my father's face in a rush of anger. "Is that what this is about? You're willing to let our biggest client walk away because your feelings are hurt?" "My feelings aren't hurt, Dad. I've simply adjusted my investment in this company to match its investment in me." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "What do you want? A title? Fine, we'll make you co-CEO with Paula." "No," I said quietly. "I don't want a consolation prize. What I wanted was for my 12 years of sacrifice to mean something. What I wanted was for you to see my value before you were in crisis. Now it's too late." Dad's expression shifted from anger to something like fear. "You can't mean that. This is your family, your legacy." "No," I corrected him. "It's Paula's legacy now. You made that decision, not me." He opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by his phone ringing. He checked the screen and cursed. "It's Thomas. I have to take this." "Good luck," I said, turning back to my work. Dad hesitated in the doorway, looking lost in a way I'd never seen before. Then he answered the call and was gone. I sat in the silence of my office, a strange emptiness opening inside me. I should have felt vindicated, seeing my predictions come true so quickly. Instead, I felt hollow. This company had been my life for so long. Watching it falter should have hurt more than it did. Maybe I was already detaching myself from Matthew's construction. Maybe that was a good thing. The Harrington crisis was just the beginning. Over the next month, 3 more major contracts fell through due to missteps in client management. Paula, for all her supposed people skills, was drowning. She didn't understand the technical constraints that informed our pricing and timelines. She made promises our teams couldn't keep. She focused on landing new clients while neglecting the relationships with existing ones. Meanwhile, I did exactly as promised. No more, no less than my job required. I managed operations efficiently during business hours. I didn't attend evening client dinners. I didn't work weekends to bail out failing projects. I didn't offer solutions to problems that weren't directly in my purview. I watched the chaos unfold with detached interest, like observing a slow-motion car crash from a safe distance. My mother showed up at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon, something she'd never done before. When I opened the door, the worry lines around her eyes were deeper than I'd ever seen them. "May I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside, gesturing her in. My apartment was spartanly furnished. I'd never spent much time here, always too busy working. Now, with my newly reclaimed evenings and weekends, I'd started to make it more of a home. New bookshelves lined one wall filled with engineering texts and novels I'd been meaning to read for years. A half-finished model of the Harrington Tower sat on my dining table. Mom noticed it immediately. "You're building a model of the tower?" "Just a hobby," I said with a shrug. "Something to do with my free time." She ran her fingers along the edge of the table, not meeting my eyes. "Your father is worried sick. The company is in trouble, Mark. I'm aware. Paula is trying her best, but she's not qualified to run a construction company." I finished for her. Mom's eyes flashed. "That's not fair. She has other strengths." "Being your favorite isn't a business qualification, Mom." She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. "Is that what you think? That we favored Paula?" "Didn't you? You gave her the company despite her having no relevant experience or demonstrated commitment? What would you call that?" Mom sank onto my couch, suddenly looking every one of her 62 years. Your father thought she could bring fresh perspectives, new ideas, and you were so good at the operational side. So good you took me for granted," I said quietly. "So reliable, you assumed I'd always be there, working myself to death for a company that would never be mine." "The company has always been yours too, Mark." I laughed without humor. "No, it hasn't. And now you're here because you're finally realizing what that means." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Your father wants to talk to you. Really talk about the future, about your role. Will you meet with him?" I considered refusing but found I didn't have the heart for it. Despite everything, these were still my parents. "When?" "Tomorrow evening. Dinner at the house." She stood and moved toward the door, then paused. "He's not sleeping. Mark, none of this is easy for him." "It's not easy for me either," I replied. "The difference is I've had 12 years to get used to disappointment." After she left, I returned to my model of the Harrington Tower, carefully gluing tiny pieces together, each component perfectly placed, each connection secure. If only real life could be engineered with such precision. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 7 p.m. the next evening. The familiar Georgian-style home looked the same as always, immaculately maintained, imposingly elegant. I'd grown up in this house, spent countless holidays and family dinners here. Now it felt like visiting a museum of my former life. My mother answered the door, relief evident on her face. "You came?" I said I would. She led me to the dining room where my father and Paula were already seated. Paula looked up with a strange smile, dark circles under her eyes. Dad stood as I entered, his face unreadable. "Mark," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." I shook his hand briefly and took my seat across from Paula. The table was set with Mom's best china and crystal, the settings reserved for important occasions. A peace offering, perhaps. Dinner was a tense affair. We made stilted small talk about the weather, about my mother's garden, about anything but the company. Finally, as the dessert plates were cleared, my father cleared his throat. "I think we should discuss the situation at Matthew's construction," he said. "What situation is that?" I asked, though we all knew. Dad's jaw tightened. "We've lost 3 major contracts in 5 weeks. The Harrington Group is threatening to reduce their future projects with us. Subcontractors are getting nervous about our stability. The situation, Mark, is that the company your grandfather founded that I built into what it is today is in danger of serious decline. And you think that's my fault?" "I think you could help prevent it if you wanted to," he replied evenly. Paula leaned forward. "Mark, I know I messed up. I'm in over my head, and I can admit that. But this is our family legacy. Please don't let it fall apart because you're angry with us." I studied my sister's face, the genuine distress there, the humility that was new for her. "It's not about anger, Paula. It's about value, about recognition." "We recognize your value," Dad insisted. "That's why we're here. We need you back, fully committed." "On what terms?" Dad exchanged a glance with my mother. "Equal partnership with Paula. Co-CEOs with a clear division of responsibilities. You handle operations, technical oversight, project management. She handles business development, client relations, marketing, and succession," I pressed. What happens when you fully retire? The two of you will share ownership equally. 50-50. I sat back, considering the offer. It was more than I'd expected, a complete reversal of their previous decision. But something felt hollow about it. This wasn't a recognition of my value. It was a panicked response to crisis. Why the change of heart? I asked. 6 weeks ago, Paula was the clear heir. What's different now, besides the company being in trouble? Dad's expression hardened. You want me to say I was wrong? Fine, I was wrong. I underestimated how crucial your specific expertise is to the company's success. I overestimated how quickly Paula could learn the business. I made a mistake in judgment. Is that what you need to hear, Robert? My mother murmured, placing a hand on his arm. I shook my head slowly. What I needed was for you to see my value before the crisis, to recognize my 12 years of dedication before everything started falling apart, to choose me because I earned it, not because you're desperate. So, what are you saying? Dad demanded. You'll let the company fail out of pride? No, I replied. I'm saying I'm done working for Matthews Construction. The silence that followed was absolute. Paula's face crumpled. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad just stared, disbelief etched in every line of his face. You can't mean that, he finally said. I do. I reached into my jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope, placing it on the table. My formal resignation, effective 2 weeks from today. I've accepted a position with Harrington Development as their new Chief Operations Officer. Harrington. Dad's voice was barely a whisper. You're going to work for Thomas? He made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Full executive authority over operations, a significant ownership stake after 5 years. Recognition of my expertise and value from day one. Not as a desperate afterthought. Paula found her voice. You're abandoning us. Your own family? No, Paula. The family abandoned me when you decided I was only good enough to work behind the scenes while you took center stage. I'm simply recognizing that reality and making the best choice for my future. Dad pushed back from the table, anger replacing shock. So that's it. 12 years and you just walk away to our biggest competitor, no less. I gave Matthews Construction 12 years of my life, Dad. 80-hour weeks, holidays, weekends, personal sacrifices you can't even imagine. And when it came time to decide the future of the company, you didn't even consider me. You just assumed I'd keep working myself to death to support Paula's inheritance. We've offered to fix that mistake, Mom interjected. Equal partnership, equal ownership. Too little, too late, I said, rising from my chair. I've made my decision. Mark, please. Paula's voice broke. We can work this out. The company needs you. I need you. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. The golden child, the favorite. Always the center of attention. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Fear and the dawning realization that she was out of her depth. You should have thought of that before you accepted a company you weren't qualified to run, I told her quietly. Actions have consequences, Paula. Welcome to the real world. I turned to leave, but my father's voice stopped me at the door. If you walk out now, don't expect to be welcomed back, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You're choosing to become our competitor. There's no coming back from that. I paused, my hand on the doorframe. I'm not your enemy, Dad. I'm just not your safety net anymore. You made your choice, and now I've made mine. The drive home was surreal. I felt lighter than I had in years, as if a weight I'd carried for so long had finally been lifted. There was sadness there, too, for the family relationships that would never be the same. For the dream of leading Matthews Construction that had died 6 weeks ago. But mostly there was anticipation, a new beginning, a chance to be valued for my skills, to build something on my own terms. My phone buzzed with texts from both Paula and my mother begging me to reconsider. I silenced it and tossed it onto the passenger seat. Their panic wasn't my problem anymore. For the first time in 12 years, I was free. The 2 weeks of my notice period were uncomfortable, to say the least. My father barely spoke to me, communicating only through terse emails when absolutely necessary. Paula alternated between tearful pleas and cold silence. The office buzzed with whispers and speculation. I worked diligently to document all my processes to ensure a smooth transition for whoever would take over my responsibilities. Despite everything, I didn't want the employees of Matthews Construction to suffer for my family's mistakes. Many of them had been with the company for years, good people who deserved better than to be casualties in a family power struggle. On my last day, Nancy organized a small farewell gathering. Most of the staff attended, though my family was conspicuously absent. There were handshakes, well wishes, a few tears from longtime colleagues. I promised to stay in touch, knowing that some friendships would survive this transition and others wouldn't. As I packed the last of my personal items into a box, my father appeared in the doorway of my office. "I thought you'd be gone by now," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Just finishing up." I closed the box and faced him. "Was there something you needed?" He entered the room slowly, looking around at the now bare walls where my engineering degrees and project photos had hung. "The Harrington Group officially notified us they won't be pursuing additional projects with us. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you?" His eyes met mine, searching. "Thomas made it clear they're following you to your new position." I nodded. "He values my expertise. As did I, Dad," said quietly. "Maybe I didn't show it the right way, but I always valued what you brought to this company, Mark. Just not enough to see me as its future leader." He sighed heavily. "I made a mistake, a father's mistake, thinking I knew what was best without actually seeing what was right in front of me. Is it too late to fix it?" For a moment I almost wavered. This was my father, the man I'd looked up to my entire life, the man whose approval I'd sought through years of dedicated work. But then I remembered the look on his face when he signed the company over to Paula, the casual way he dismissed my ambitions with Paula's better with people. The assumption that I would continue working myself to exhaustion behind the scenes while she took the spotlight. "Yes," I said finally, "it is too late. I've signed a contract with Harrington. I've given my word." Dad nodded slowly as if he'd expected this answer but hoped for different. "You always were a man of your word. That's something I always admired about you." He extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, I shook it. "Good luck, Mark. I mean that. Thank you. I wish the same for Matthews Construction." As he turned to leave, he paused in the doorway. "The door isn't closed forever. You know, if things don't work out at Harrington, if you ever want to come home, this isn't my home anymore, Dad. You made sure of that." He flinched slightly but nodded in acknowledgement. "Goodbye, son. Goodbye, Dad." After he left, I stood in the empty office for a long moment, memories washing over me. My first day as operations manager, late nights poring over bids, the celebration when we landed the Harrington Tower contract. So much of my life had been spent within these walls, but that chapter was closing. It was time to write a new one. I picked up my box and walked out, nodding goodbye to Nancy as I passed the reception desk. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright, the future stretching before me like an open road. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Thomas Harrington, probably calling to confirm my start date on Monday. As I loaded my box into the car, I glanced back at the Matthews Construction sign above the entrance, the family name that had defined me for so long. My heritage, my burden, my almost legacy. Not anymore. I got into my car and drove away without looking back. No longer behind the scenes, but center stage in my own story. No longer taken for granted, but valued for exactly who I was and what I could do. It wasn't the ending I had once imagined for myself. It was better, a beginning of my own making. And as for Matthews Construction, let Paula handle it. She was the heir after all. But I was finally free. 6 months later, I stood in Thomas Harrington's office overlooking the city skyline. The Harrington Tower, my tower, in many ways, gleamed in the afternoon sun, a testament to what I could accomplish when my talents were recognized. "The board approved the expansion plan," Thomas said, sliding a folder across his desk. "They were particularly impressed with your efficiency projections. We're greenlit for the West Coast offices." I leafed through the documents, a sense of pride warming my chest. In half a year, I'd transformed Harrington's operations, streamlining processes and introducing innovations that had increased profits by nearly 20%. That's excellent news, I replied. When do we break ground? Next month. And they want you to oversee the initial setup personally. Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying me. You've exceeded every expectation, Mark. I knew you were good, but this... He gestured to the performance reports on his desk. This is exceptional. Thank you for the opportunity to prove it. No need for thanks. In business, recognizing talent is just good sense. He paused, his expression turning curious. Have you heard from your family lately? The question caught me off guard. I'd managed to avoid thinking about Matthew's construction, about my parents, about Paula for weeks at a time. Not directly, no. I heard through the grapevine that they're struggling. Lost the Westmore project to Klein and Associates last week. I nodded, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also a faint echo of regret. Not for my decision to leave, never that. But for the family relationships that had been casualties of that choice. They made their bed, I said finally. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. Indeed they did. Still, family is complicated. As I drove home that evening, Thomas's words lingered. Family was complicated. Despite everything, there were moments when I missed Sunday dinners at my parents' house, the easy banter with Paula before business came between us, the sense of belonging to something with roots deeper than my own life. My phone rang through the car speakers, a number I didn't recognize. Hello, Mark. It's Nancy. Nancy from Matthews, our former receptionist. Nancy, good to hear from you. How are you? I'm fine, but... She hesitated. I thought you should know. Your father had a heart attack last night. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Is he? He's stable in the hospital. They're saying it was stress-related. Her voice softened. The company's in trouble, Mark. Real trouble. Your sister is in over her head and your father's been working himself to the bone trying to keep things afloat. I pulled over, needing a moment to process this. Why are you telling me this, Nancy? Because despite everything, they're your family. And because there are 43 families who depend on Matthew's construction for their livelihoods. Good people who had nothing to do with how you were treated. After we hung up, I sat in my car watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. 6 months ago, I'd walked away from Matthew's construction without looking back, determined to prove my worth elsewhere. I'd succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. I had nothing left to prove to my parents, to Paula, to myself. Perhaps that was why, for the first time since leaving, I allowed myself to truly consider what was happening at my family's company. Not with satisfaction at their struggles, but with clear-eyed assessment of the situation. Matthew's construction was failing. My father was in the hospital. Dozens of families faced uncertain futures. And while none of that was my responsibility, while I'd earned the right to say, let Paula handle it, I found I couldn't simply ignore it either. Not because I owed my family anything. Not because I'd forgotten their betrayal, but because I was no longer defined by that betrayal. I'd moved beyond it, built a new life, proven my worth. I was operating from a position of strength now, not hurt. I picked up my phone and dialed Paula's number. It rang 4 times before she answered, her voice small and tired. Mark, is that you? It's me. Nancy called about... Dad. How is he stable? She sounded exhausted. The doctors say he needs to reduce his stress levels dramatically. And the company... A long pause. It's bad. We're going to lose the Miller contract next week unless we can somehow cut costs by 15%. 3 project managers have quit. Suppliers are demanding payment up front because they've heard rumors we're going under. Her voice cracked. I don't know what to do, Mark. I'm in so far over my head. 6 months ago, those words would have filled me with vindication. Now they just made me sad. I'm coming to the hospital, I said finally. We should talk about what? About options for Dad, for the company, for everyone involved. You'd do that after everything? I thought about Thomas's words, about family being complicated, about the satisfaction of proving myself at Harrington, about the 43 families who depended on Matthew's construction. I'm not making any promises, I said carefully. But yes, I'll come talk. As I pulled back onto the road, I realized something important. True freedom wasn't just about escaping the past or proving your worth. It was about choosing your path forward from a position of strength on your own terms. Sometimes that might even mean circling back, not to where you began, but to something new, built on the foundations of the old. I didn't know what would come of my conversation with Paula. Perhaps nothing, perhaps a consulting arrangement to help stabilize the company, perhaps something else entirely. What I did know was this: whatever happened next would be my choice. Not made from desperation or obligation, but from the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were worth. And that, more than anything, was the true victory. Living well on my own terms with the power to choose my own path forward.